Back in 2020, Asus ROG just launched their very first Zephyrus G14 and it was a fantastic device. And here we are, 4 years later. I think Asus once again outdone themselves with their latest model of the Zephyrus G14. Hello and welcome back again to Junkyard Summit, and today we are taking a look at the Asus ROG Zephyrus G14 2024 model. And this year's G14 got a total makeover, turning this 14-incher shorter, slimmer, and lighter. Compared to the original G14, the 2024 model weighs around 100 grams less and is around 20mm slimmer while offering a larger 16x10 3K ROG Nebula display. The anime matrix also made its exit, and instead we are greeted by the all-new slash design. It still doesn't support RGB lighting, and customization is less as compared to the anime matrix with only 15 pre-programmed animations. Personally, not a huge fan of this slash design as I prefer the more subtle approach of the previous G14. This year's model also got a huge quality upgrade and is now made out of aluminum alloy that is CNC machined for extra rigidity and positioning this G14 closer to those more premium laptops. And not just the quality, the display also got a huge upgrade, as the G14 can be used now more than just gaming with its OLED panel. You can actually do serious creative editing as this is Pantone validated with a color measurement of 100% for sRGB, 95% Adobe RGB, and 100% P3 with a peak brightness of 441 nits. Gaming has also not been skimped on as this has an impressive response time of 0.2 milliseconds with G-Sync support, which is rare for a laptop. The refresh rate is also stepped down from last year, now maxing only at 120Hz, but at the same time, it is a trade-off that I would accept in exchange for variable refresh rate support and OLED's advantages. Speakers also got a sizable upgrade from 4 speakers to 6, and Asus claims that it should be around close to 3 times louder as compared to the previous model. So this is what the webcam looks like. It is actually pretty good despite there's no any artificial lights that's currently turned on, and all we have is just the light coming from the afternoon sun. Typing experience on the 2024 model still feels great, similar to my old G14. There are minor differences including longer travel distance, bigger keycaps, but generally it is still fantastic to type on. It is also illuminated and customizable via Armoury Crate. Trackpad on the other hand is night and day, and that is on a positive note. I am aware that the trackpad size has been increased in previous iteration already, but given that all I have is the older G14, this fixes my biggest complaint. Size is almost 1.5 times bigger both horizontally and vertically, and paired with the glass surface, the touchpad on this year's G14 is incredible. Ports on this year's G14 are similar but with some key notable changes. Since the exhaust vents are now exclusively at the back, all ports now are pushed back and there are some ports that have been switched. Over at the right side, we have a Type-C Gen 2 with display support, a USB Type-A that is also Gen 2, and a microSD card slot. Over at the other side, we have Asus's new proprietary reversible charger port, an HDMI 2.1, USB 4 capable of PD up to 100 watts, another Type-A that is Gen 2 as well, and lastly, an audio jack. I do like the new charger port as barrel ports gets loose over time, but we'll see how this port holds up later down in the future. Specs-wise, this year's G14 rocks AMD's newest CPU with the Ryzen 9 8945HS, an up to NVIDIA RTX 4070 laptop GPU, 32 gigs of soldered LP DDR5X memory, and a terabyte of Gen 4 storage. While the processor is under the 8000 series, the 8945HS is still based on last year's Zen 4 architecture and is almost identical with last year's 7940HS, with the difference of having an on-chip AI capabilities. You won't see much of a difference in gaming performance, but this Neural Processing Unit or NPU is a great addition to those who are keen on generative AI, including Stable Diffusion and Adobe products. As for pricing, the G14 here in the Philippines comes in 2 variants. The 4070 model is priced at around 160,000 Philippine peso and comes both in Eclipse Gray and Platinum White, while the cheaper RTX 4060 variant comes at 130,000 Philippine peso, but you are only limited to the Eclipse Gray option. Looking at performance, all of my testing are done under the performance mode, and we could see that the G14 doesn't really blow your mind, only beating the older 7735HS, which by the way is on an older architecture by just 10 to 20% and is getting beaten by an i7 13650HX by the same percentage. I already expected this given that our Ryzen 9 chip is packed inside this slim laptop, but don't take this negatively as these results are still among the fastest you can find on a laptop. Gaming performance on the G14 is also a mixed bag. On one hand, you can comfortably run a lot of AAA titles above 60 FPS on a 16x10 equivalent of 1080p gaming. But if we run those games natively, then a lot of these games would struggle unless you would opt to run it on lower visual fidelity or if the game can utilize super sampling technology such as DLSS or FSR. A very good example here is in Resident Evil 4 wherein the frames are much better even with ray tracing turned on and visually the game still looks fantastic. Another good example is Witcher 3. While this game is a little bit dated already, you can still see that GPUs are struggling to run this game comfortably, and with DLSS and frame gen, I was able to increase the game's average FPS by around 35%, and again, that is even with ray tracing on. Surprisingly, if I compare this to the Strix G16 I reviewed last year, performance was worse given that the Strix laptop uses only a 4060 GPU. A good explanation is that the G14 limits the amount of power to feed both the CPU and GPU given its size, hence severely power throttling the GPU to 75 watts in most of the time. And if you don't mind the additional noise, then you could always set the power profile to turbo for extra performance, though unfortunately I was not able to test it out due to time constraints. One of the weaker aspects of this year's G14 is on its thermal performance. We already saw that Asus pretty much limits the power, but that doesn't stop it from reaching 92 degrees Celsius peak for the CPU and 85 degrees Celsius for the GPU when under load. And this is already with their updated tri-fan cooling, improved heat pipes, and liquid metal application. Average temps is a bit more manageable, ranging only from 89 degrees Celsius for the CPU and 81 degrees Celsius for the GPU. Battery life is not bad, but not great either, given that it lasted me for almost 6 hours worth of YouTube playback with 50% sound and 50% brightness. And as for my take on this laptop, the Asus ROG Zephyrus G14 is actually one of the best laptops I've tested here in the studio, and I would really love to upgrade my older G14 to this year's model. You get OLED display, premium build quality, latest generation of hardware on a thinner and lighter chassis. But if you're coming from the 2023 model, I'd highly suggest to skip this one as you won't be getting much of a performance upgrade as internally it is pretty much the same. There are also a couple of things that I can comment about, including the higher price tag, limited upgradability as compared to the older model, and maybe better thermals. But that doesn't stop me from recommending the 2024 G14 to users who are looking for a powerful 14-inch laptop. I'm also kind of hoping that Asus would release a mid-tier option, maybe throw in a Ryzen 5 together with a 4060, similar to what I have with my current G14. So yeah, I think that's it for today, and if you have any comments about the 2024 G14, comment it down below, and if you find this video informative or useful, go hit that like button and also do subscribe to my channel for more laptop reviews like this one. Once again, this is Brain of Junkyard Summit. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.